Minister, I want to raise the treatment of the 14 Irish citizens and hundreds of other civilians illegally held by the State of Israel. After the genocidal campaign of violence mounted by the IDF in Gaza, much of it documented by Palestinian victims on the ground, we felt we couldn't be shocked any further. And yet, the images and videos of Israel's National Security Minister Ben-Gvir haranguing prisoners who were bound, who were kneeling before him, reveals a new element of performative cruelty. It brings to mind the pictures of detainees in Guantanamo Bay or in Iraq that leaked out online following the invasion of that country. Even the then American administration had the sense of shame to try and conceal the images of abuse undertaken in their name. But here we see no shame. Instead, we see a government minister in a state that claims to be democratic, that claims to uphold the rule of law, brazenly parading his power over captives. If you look at the current political situation in Israel, the reason becomes more clear. There's a debate going on now in the Knesset about a bill that could dissolve the Israeli parliament early and force a snap election. This, while the current Israeli government is behind in the opinion polls, so Irish citizens are being used as props by Minister Ben-Gvir in his pre-election campaign. This is a new low from the far-right parties that prop up Netanyahu's regime. And while our immediate focus is on the treatment of these civilians, we must not forget why they are imprisoned in an Israeli port. While sailing in international waters, these civilians had their boats boarded and were captured and taken away at gunpoint. In any other circumstance, we describe this like it is, an act of piracy. An act of piracy by the government of Israel, which is again showing why that country has become a pariah in the international community. Minister, earlier this morning you clarified the 14 Irish citizens are among those being deported to Turkey. Do you and your officials know if any of the Irish citizens have been physically harmed in any way while they were imprisoned? And what meaningful steps will Ireland take against the Israeli government for its brazen breaches of international humanitarian law?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. And again, I think the very footage that we saw yesterday, to your point, you think you can't be shocked, and then you see further footage that shocks you again and again when it comes to the actions of the Israeli government. While we do not have, and I do not have, a direct report as to whether or not any of our Irish citizens have been physically harmed, because the Israeli government have not let us have direct contact with them. I think the very fact that we saw an Irish woman in that video being forcibly shoved through the ground, but all of the citizens then being detained with their hands bound behind their back, faces on the ground, that in itself is treatment that is absolutely appalling. But of course my priority is to understand as soon as possible whether or not there have been any further serious harm done to our citizens, and indeed to any other citizens as well. And so when they arrive in the airport, they'll be met by our ambassador in Istanbul, and I hope before then we'll have direct contact, but if not, we will have direct contact with our citizens then, and I hope to get more information to the Houses beyond that. I mean, the only way in which we can respond to this effectively is by making sure that Europe uses its voice and takes action in response to what we've seen today, what we've seen in recent weeks, and what we've seen in recent months. And again, I would stress that the approach from Ireland has always been to try and build a consensus. We're not just saying what I'm saying, or I'm not just saying it now because of what's happened this week. We have for many, many months been very clear, ensuring that this remains on the agenda of the Foreign Affairs Council and advocating for a consensus and a joined-up approach and response to what has been happening in Gaza, in the West Bank, and now more recently the actions we've seen around the death penalty, around the public executions and prosecutions, as well as the interception this week. I believe the best way that we can show that we are serious is by voting to suspend the trade elements of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. It's by putting a new proposal on the table that would ban trade with the illegal occupied territories. We know it's illegal. Europe has accepted the international ruling in this regard, and so we need to be strong and we need to collectively respond to this ruling. And finally, that we then move on our own legislation as well, while I've always said I believe moving on our own legislation would be better to do so in tandem, I haven't changed that position, and that's why I'm working with my colleagues from the Netherlands, from Belgium, from Slovenia and other countries who I know are also progressing their own legislation, so that we would do this collectively and that we would send a very strong message. But again, I think the way in which you show not just dissatisfaction, but the way in which the Israeli government have been acting, the way in which you show that this is not something that Europe will tolerate, it is by imposing greater sanctions that will impact their economy overall. And if you suspend the trade elements of the EU-Israel Association Agreement, you will essentially impact their overall economy by billions of euros, and I believe that that is the strongest response that we can take at this time.
Deputy O'Gorman.
Minister, I want to broaden this discussion to the future of the state of Palestine. In less than 5 weeks' time, Ireland takes on the presidency of the European Union. You'll personally chair meetings of the Foreign Affairs Council and the General Affairs Council. It's a unique privilege and it's a unique responsibility. Minister, do you intend to put the question of EU support for Palestinian statehood on the agenda of those meetings? Our recognition of Palestinian statehood in 2024 was an important moment, but your government can't keep referring back to that as if our responsibilities are fulfilled. And Minister, to be clear, I'm not talking about humanitarian funding or agreements on tax revenue withholding. I'm asking if you intend to put that existential question of Palestinian statehood at the centre of the EU meetings that you will chair, where you will set the agenda over the next 6 months.
Minister McAfee.
Deputy, well, what I can say is that I will work closely with Kaya Kallas, who's the High Representative who chairs the meeting, but who I'll be working closely with throughout the presidency, that we will ensure the situation in the Middle East, in Gaza, in the West Bank, that is firmly on the agenda, and that there will be a number of actions taken. Ireland will have to be a neutral arbiter, as we are for any of the files, any of the councils that we chair, and that happened throughout our presidency. But you can be assured, and that has been the case already in my discussions with Kaya Kallas, that we will have this particular issue firmly on the agenda. And there are a number of things that I believe we need to do more on, and we need to press not just the votes that I've spoken about, the EU-Israel Association Agreement, the banning of trade, the sanctions that we approved last week, but the need for greater levels of humanitarian access. Every single council I'm at, we get an update from the Commission saying there is not enough aid getting in. We're seeing figures being put out there that don't reflect the fact that half of the trucks going in don't have food. They have products that can only be sold that people can't afford. And so there's so much that we need to do at a European level to keep this on the agenda. And I'm absolutely determined, and I can assure you that this matter will be kept on the agenda during our presidency.
Deputy Paul Gorgerty.